Well, hello, I'm Marilyn Hawes with Unprecedented TV for my show Heart and Soul, and you can find us on YouTube. I'm also CEO of Freedom from Abuse, which is a charity seeking to prevent child abuse, but also any abuse in society, of course, of which there is too much. For Heart and Soul, I'm inviting anyone, a lived experience or a story to tell as a guest on my show, or someone that has an extremely interesting profession, such as my guest who's coming on in a moment. And so if you have a situation you think needs to be given more oxygen and you'd like some time and space to tell it, you know, you're on for about 45, 50 minutes. So please give Unprecedented TV a call. We will then discuss the issues from which many people turn away, and they don't want to accept other people's reality. And so I think this is what I focus on. Let's do those difficult, tricky subjects. And I think that has got to be got out there. So basically, we're kicking the elephant out the room, okay? And today, no more so than today, this is a very gritty subject. I'm so honoured to be welcoming, excuse me, Professor Jane Monckton-Smith. You can find her all over the media. Good morning, Jane. Lovely to see you. You look too beautiful to do the awful job that you have to do. It's lovely to have you here. So Professor Jane Monckton-Smith, I think I've got the title right, Professor of Public Protection at the University of Gloucester, but also a forensic criminologist and absolutely majoring on domestic homicide. So I'll tell you what, Jane, I read earlier today that you studied at the University of Southampton, which is where I come from.
I did some postgrad stuff at the University of Southampton, and I taught there as well. I taught criminology.
Oh my word! Oh my God! Yes. No, it's funny, isn't it? So very often the town you're brought up in, or the city, in that case, you never go back to.
Yeah.
I never really liked it. So you began life in the police force, yes, and look at how far that journey's brought you. So were you a detective?
Oh, goodness me, no. No. I joined the police way back in the early 80s. I mean, it was very, very different then to what it is now. I was only 19 years old. So it was a baptism of fire, I think, going into the police. But it did teach me very quickly a lot about how we respond to different types of crime. And I think that more than anything directed where my interests were.
Mm. So did you went to a lot of domestic abuse call-outs?
Of course, yes, I did, because then, as it is now, makes up, a big percentage of police work is domestic abuse calls.
Yes, that is very interesting, because I do, when we were talking in the week, I love, and it has stopped since COVID, I like going out on ride-outs with the police. I wanted to be in the police, and my dad let me. So my interest in crime, which sounds awful, doesn't it? My interest in crime. My grandson once says I used to go into prisons a lot and talk to offenders. And my grandson, when he was little, once told his other grandma that Nana goes into prison. Lovely. Out of the mouths of babies. But the one I went in, this is where I absolutely know the police, I think you will agree, need better education, because this was only 18 months ago. And I was on a ride out with the police, and we went to a domestic abuse. And the guy who was driving said around about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it all seems to kick off. And we went to this house, and the lady there had only said that, she said, I think I'm suffering from gaslighting. And I was there as an observer. And this guy who had been 7 years as a blue responder turned around and said to her, had she had her boiler checked?
Oh, do you know that? That is funny, and it sounds like it should be in a comedy routine, doesn't it? I mean, it's totally outrageously inappropriate, when especially terms like gaslighting, now we know what they are. The police get trained in this kind of thing, and if he doesn't even know the basic language of the type of crime that he's dealing with, that's really concerning.
It is. I actually did write a complaint because he then went on to make personal comments about the lady when she said she thought she'd been raped. It was outrageous, and I had to actually report it. I don't know whether he was pulled across or not, or whatever happened. I don't know. But so how long was it then before you actually started studying and doing your training in this?
Well, it was I left the police, and then there was a huge gap where I did some other things. And then I started studying actually when I was pregnant with my first child, and I was thinking, well, I can't do what I used to do, so and it was obvious to me anyway that I was going to study criminology, which is what I did.
I find it fascinating. Absolutely love it. I really do. So the thought of domestic homicide, is that right up there with domestic suicide, or does, how does that work?
Well, my work has focused specifically on fatalities related to domestic abuse. So I started looking at homicide, and more recently, but years, I have been looking at the number of, especially women, who take their own lives as a result of domestic abuse, especially coercive control. And the numbers are staggering. They are higher than the homicides. And it's only recently that we have formally made direct and causal links between somebody taking their own life and suffering high risk coercive control and domestic abuse. The first coroner's decision, which was considered a landmark decision, was in 2022. And that was in relation to the suicide of a young woman called Jessica Laverack. And I was thinking, it's not rocket science that if somebody is living with awful high risk abuse, that of course suicide is going to come into their head, especially if they feel they can't escape it. So I was very, very shocked when I first looked at the numbers. Now, another shocking thing then about this, we weren't even counting them. So we count suicides. We've been counting suicide for a long time. But what we don't do is split suicide up into types of suicide. So domestic abuse related suicide was never counted. And then all of a sudden, about 18 months, maybe 2 years ago, we decided to start formally counting them. Now, the first count, which came out, said that it was about 2 to 3 every week, which kind of matches the homicide numbers. But even they say, look, that number's going to rise. And not necessarily because more people are going to be taking their own lives, but because we're actually starting to recognize it now. We're looking for it. We know what, the signs and the history is. So there was some more research done in 2023, which put the number at potentially 34 a week, which, so, so between
that's suicides because of domestic
abuse related suicides only. So we're in the foothills of understanding how big that is.
And do you find the men, is it in equal numbers with those suicides or homicides? Are there the domestic homicides? Is it mainly the men, or a gay relationship that's on the victim, or is it, do you get a lot of male domestic homicides as well, or is it primarily women? Right.
So there's no way of sugarcoating this. I'm just going to say it how it is. By a huge margin, women will be the victims, a huge margin. So the Global Homicide Report, so looking at this problem across the world, and every country in the world has a similar problem. 82% of victims will be women killed by a male partner or relative. So when you ask, who is it mainly? It's mainly women. Now, that doesn't mean that men don't get killed in this context, because they do. But the numbers are much, much, much smaller.
And is that the same sort of count for the suicide? The men, I mean, I had 19 years in coercive control, so I absolutely relate to what you're saying, that feeling of entrapment. And in my case as well, I actually made myself homeless to get away from it, because I just couldn't. It is, and it's a thing that the people who haven't been there, people who don't understand it, you have got nothing to show, have you? There's nothing. You've got no bruises. You've got nothing. And I mean, I've often thought when I was going through it, would I rather have been physically abused than this? And at the end, towards the end, it became physical. And I was in such a mess, I didn't know which I preferred, but I just had to get out. And it also takes people to understand how long it takes to get over it, do they?
They don't. I think it's the old narrative then of what domestic abuse looks like. We expect it to be a woman sitting in the corner crying, covered in bruises. That's the picture we get in our head, isn't it, when we think about domestic abuse? And certainly, you know, that's true, that happens as well. But I think the real trauma of domestic abuse doesn't come simply from being physically injured.
No.
It comes from, and I think you just said the word, entrapment.
I
can't get out of this, and even if I do get out of this, they're still going to be there. They're still going to be following me, punishing me. You know, I'm still scared, stalking me. And if you've got children with them, that's going to be lifelong. So leaving is not the end of domestic abuse. It's the start of the next phase.
100%. And that's what happened to me when I had the audacity to leave. Which he never saw coming, even though I told him. I'd be in his shops. I'd suddenly find him looking over my shoulder. One night, we had a downstairs cloakroom, and I had the little casement window open, and I went down there, and his face was in the window, in the casement window. And I'm not a violent person, but I punched him in the face because I was so shocked and horrified. And yes, the stalking, he would sit at the end in his car at the end of the road. He even cut down the hedge of the house that I'd finally moved into, having been sofa surfing at a friend's house, cut it down so he could see me from where he was parked. In the end, of course, he had an injunction. But it is, as you say, the second stage. So there has to be, I have read your book on control. I think every single person, man and woman, should read it. It's an easy read because you haven't made it all academically. It is an easy read, even though it's a difficult subject. But everybody, I believe, needs to read it. And I know Charlotte has my producer has a photograph that she's going to put in, because it is such an interesting read. So because you don't. I know how it builds up, but can you explain to people that timeline, which is actually quite scary?
Yeah, well, the timeline is a huge challenge to that narrative, you know, that this domestic abuse is about they come home drunk on a Saturday night, or these two people just can't get on. And, you know, it's just the dynamic between the two. It's a huge challenge to that, and is saying, no, this is a pattern, and it's a remarkably common pattern that we're seeing in every country across the world.
Interesting.
Yeah. So when you read it, I think when you read the pattern, because it's set out, isn't it, in stages.
It's a blueprint. It's a blueprint.
When you see that pattern, you can't ever unsee it. And then it's only when you recognize the pattern, I think, you're safer. You're safer because you can see it coming. And of course, the best way to avoid domestic abuse is not to meet controlling people. That's the best one. But, you know, the next best is to be able to recognize them when you see them early enough that you don't get trapped. But if you do get trapped, knowledge is power. And I think the recognizing that 8-stage pattern removes some of the chaos around domestic abuse, because it can, when you're in it, it can feel like chaos, and for people looking in, it can look like chaos, can't it? It removes all of that, and you think, no, I'm in stage 5.
Yeah.
You know, so I'll just explain what we did. So I was a homicide researcher, so I was already aware of certain models to track risk of homicide in lots of different categories. And there's one called temporal sequencing, which is what the timeline is, which means you just say, well, it starts here and it builds and builds and it ends there. Nobody had ever applied it to domestic homicides, which I thought, hang on a minute, it's the second biggest category of homicide that we've got. Why has nobody done this? And one of the reasons, I think, is because we think that domestic homicides come out of an argument and somebody went too far. That's not what's happening. So I thought, no, let's apply this. And so I was already working with bereaved families and hearing their stories in huge detail. And the pattern was so strong, Marilyn, so strong. And we split it up into 8 stages. So each stage represents an escalation in risk. So 1 to 2, your risk's gone up. So it's very easy for people to understand as well.
Well, yes. It was funny, actually. I was talking to someone the other day and they were telling me this story. And I just said, I already know what your next sentence is going to be. And they went, how do you know that? I said, because I've been there. And I said, and it was about, I said, so she opens your post, yeah? And how do you know that? I said, because that's what they do. I got to the stage where I was having to take my handbag to bed with me. I couldn't, snooping, listening in on the phone, everything, absolutely dreadful. And it is like that. You can absolutely see the pattern in other people's lives. And you're right. People think it's like, you're the wrong end of the other side, the wrong side of the railway track. But I mean, the amount that goes on, I'm sure in saying, and very wealthy families as well, in the nice posh houses.
Yep, everyone. Because domestic abuse, we need to shift the language. So yes. We're very used to using that term, domestic abuse. And I don't object to the term, but the problem with it is such a well-known term. We get that picture, don't we? Yeah. The better term is coercive control.
Absolutely.
That's the dangerous form of domestic abuse. Mm-hmm. And then, but it also tells you what the abuse actually is. Like you're talking about being tracked and monitored and checked on, and there's rules and regulations and expectations in the relationship that you've got to meet. And sometimes you don't realize how many rules you're following until you think, hang on.
And some of them are just so minuscule that you don't even think of it as control. I mean, I can remember my ex-husband telling me off because I hadn't hung his socks on the line properly. And I just thought...
in the right direction.
That's a bit weird, but, things then. And because then, when it was me, at that time, I mean, it's been quite recent, really, hasn't it? It's become from domestic violence to domestic abuse.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I thought, well, at the start, for many years, he wasn't violent. And then at the end, he did become violent. But it is the coercive control. What do you think about your opinion? And I don't know what it actually stands for, but the police dash thing that they have when they go out.
Okay, so dash, and the dash is what we would call a risk assessment.
Yeah.
Method, but there are lots of different risk assessment models. Dash was the one that became dominant. Okay, So what it is, it's a risk identification checklist. So you will talk to the victim and you will say, is there this? Is there this? And there's a big list of about 27 or something, depending which one. And the idea was that the more ticks you get, the more at risk you are, which is a logical assumption, isn't it? The problem comes, there will always be problems with that kind of thing, because the person asking the questions has to have knowledge of what they're talking about, but also the logic that the more ticks, the more danger, that doesn't actually work.
Right.
Because we looked at some research that came out of the United States, and to raise your risk of homicide by 900%, you only need 3 ticks.
Yeah, you see, this is it, isn't it? This is it. I mean, I saw one of the booklets that said, oh, this is like small risk, medium risk, high risk. But if you're in that scoring thing that this one officer had, and I said, but, you know, if you are, say, to go into high risk, you know, you have to have 10 at medium risk. If you're 9 and suddenly a kickoff comes, you've gone up a grade, haven't you?
Or if you try to leave, that's when
that's
really gone.
You see, this is where the moment someone says to you, oh, why don't you just leave? You absolutely know you're talking to the wrong person.
You absolutely do know you're talking to the wrong person, because they don't understand what domestic abuse or coercive control is about. So the most high risk tick will be separation, threatening separation, or your partner imagining that you might separate from them because they've got pathological jealousy or something, you know. Most homicides will happen either post-separation or when separation has been discussed, or it looks like it might be likely. Now, that's not something, surprisingly, that is well known. So when you say to someone, why don't you leave? It's not a stupid question, because obviously you want them to leave.
Yes.
But it's that lack of recognition that, okay, this is a process. Leaving isn't a thing you do. It's a process that happens. And are you prepared for the next part of this abuse journey?
That's right. And I've said to people as well, because I actually do deal with domestic abuse victims, and those also that are, because as I said earlier, freedom from abuse is about all abuse, and those who are thinking of going. And I said, if you're thinking of going, you need to make sure you've got all your paperwork and your passports and your bank stuff, everything, your contacts, your keys, everything squirreled away somewhere so that you can pick that bag up and run. I mean, I ran at 11 o'clock at night, and I've had all sorts of things. I had some stuff put in this friend's house and some in that friend's house, but my personal paperwork and that of the children, I literally kept close. Because when you literally have to go, you can't faff around, can you? You can't go, oh, excuse me a minute, I'll be gone in half an hour.
No, it's actually, you know, obviously I'm looking at the more serious end of the spectrum all the time. But my advice, and, you know, you can disagree with me, but I would always say to somebody who's thinking of leaving their partner, leave first, then tell them.
Oh, wow, yeah. Yeah,
because we've had some very, very serious situations where they've discussed leaving because they think that's the reasonable thing to do, and they're a reasonable person, and then they stay living together until the lease ends or until they sell the house. No, never, ever do that. Never do that. Leaving, when you decide it's safe to leave, you leave, and you don't have leave.
Wow, you see, that's where I went wrong. Because I did the 2 years of separation. I waited for the house to sell and all of that. And the 2 years of separation, you know, like existing together, basically. He'd come in, I'd go out, and all that sort of stuff, which is also awful for the children. I mean, do you find, because I do a course with parents, who are really embarrassed that their children are vile to them. Do you see any domestic homicides where a son or a daughter has killed the parent as a domestic abuse situation?
Yes.
Yeah.
One particular case comes to mind where the woman's 17-year-old son, defending her, actually killed the perpetrator. He was charged with murder at 17, but the jury found him not guilty, which is probably the very best outcome. But that poor young man has to live with that for the rest of his life. And I don't know if you have seen a case that has just been in court very recently, last couple of weeks. And this is slightly different, but the perpetrator had got the child, I think under 10 years old, to be part of the homicide, literally part of the homicide. So, nobody's safe when these people start thinking in this way, especially children.
No, I mean, they do use children as part of their weaponry, don't they? They definitely do. And it's collateral control somehow, that they really think you're not going to, and that is the trouble, isn't it? You're going to get up and leave, but you're leaving the children with somebody who's abusive.
Or you're taking them.
Or you take them with you. Yeah, I took mine with me.
And then they're going to fight you for custody.
Oh, absolutely.
So
and then you get the game playing, don't you? They're not going to pay the maintenance. So you are the one that has to go into court. You're going to pay for the court. So in the end, they try and bankrupt you.
I mean, that's what we would call post-separation abuse.
Right.
Which again is another pattern that we've identified, the kinds of things that they do in post-separation abuse, because some of them will be stalkers and some of them, it will be post-separation abuse. But it's not something that our court systems are even identifying or recognizing at the moment. We need urgently to understand this very strong, repeated and abusive pattern of these coercively controlling people.
It is just absolutely horrific. Do we have, because we used to have, when people have been a victim of all this, and maybe somebody has literally has died at the hands of someone, do we have a law? There used to be, I'm thinking of Sarah Payne when she was murdered, there was Sarah's law. Do we have a law that is people, the family of someone who was a victim has actually worked so hard to pass into Parliament?
Well, one of the things that I've found is that many of the changes that we have around domestic abuse and coercive control have come from the campaigning of victims and of bereaved families. So one of the most well-known laws, if you like, would be Clare's law.
Yes, that's the one, yeah.
So Clare's law allows victims to request information about the history of somebody that they are in a relationship with. But the police can also proactively just tell you. So there's not that many countries that have something similar to Clare's law, because I go and train police officers across Europe, and they always say, why haven't we got Clare's law? Yeah. We need Clare's law. Yeah. Of course, it can look very simple that if you know about your partner's past, then you are informed and empowered, but you're still in the position where you now are with a coercively controlling and potentially dangerous person. So there are complexities, but Clare's law shows us a really important thing that we know about coercively controlling people. They are serial and repeat offenders. It is not, underline, anything to do with the dynamics between the victim and the perpetrator. Victims do not cause abuse or control in any way. So Clare's law, in its very existence, says if they've done it before, they're going to do it again, and you need to know. So I think, in principle, maybe in practice, we're not always getting it right, but in principle, Clare's law is a very good thing.
It is. It is. And there was another recent one you mentioned to me. I can't remember. Remy
Law.
Right.
Law. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is.
That was that came in after the murder of Ranim Uday and Kola Salim, her mother. So her ex-partner killed her and her mother. And Noor Norris, who is Kola's sister, campaigned for there to be domestic abuse, coercive control expertise in police control rooms, you know, when you're getting those 999 calls, to
Yes.
make sure that you respond properly and effectively to them.
Oh, just like my man with the boiler.
Yeah, well, exactly.
There are still these pockets of what I would say black ignorance, aren't there? You know, how do you find the because our prisons are full, and we've, you know, how many actually go to jail? I mean, are they, you know, oh, you said sorry, off you go? How many of them actually are prosecuted, convicted, prosecuted, and imprisoned?
I can't tell you the exact figures, but I think from, you know, we've got the existence of it, and we know that probably, you know, most of it doesn't even get reported.
So well, that's it.
Yeah,
exactly. Of course.
So,
yeah.
It is the victims are keeping quiet.
Oh, yeah. It really is weird that you feel embarrassed. I mean, I was a deputy head at the school, and I was always the one with the smiling face and all of that, like looking like I was coping, and you know, because you really, it's such a personal part of your life, isn't it? That you don't
fear as well, because
100%.
One of the things that we know about coercive control, for example, is that there are rules. There are rules that are set down by the controlling person. And one of the big broad rules, there's ones about jealousy always, but there's ones about loyalty as well. Yes. So you will never speak badly of me. You will never disclose. You will never call the police. And if you break those rules, there are consequences for you. Yeah. So it's all very, you know, it's all very complex. But so we know that the vast majority of control and abuse is not reported. When it is reported, when we get to actual convictions from reporting, it's less than 5%. It's like between 1% and 3%. It's absolutely ludicrous that we have not yet still managed to be able to get the evidence we need, get the trust of the people who are reporting it, because so many victims will retract their statements. Of course they will, because they're being left with the consequences of having made this report and making this person a bit more dangerous than, you know, even than they were before. So we've got a lot of work to do.
Oh, it's definitely absolutely right. And I mean, I am delighted that the work you've done, you got an OBE in 2024, and how deserving. Did that come as a surprise?
I've never been so shocked in my life. When I got the letter, I had just flown back from somewhere in Europe, I think Copenhagen, and it was kind of midnight. And I came in and my post was on the side, and I thought, oh God, this looks a bit dodgy. What have I done? What have I done this time? Because it hadn't. So I was gobsmacked, I think is probably the word, when I saw that I was getting an OBE. No idea, zero idea at all.
So you went to the palace. You went to Buckingham House, I suppose, didn't you? Buckingham Palace.
Went to the no, it wasn't Buckingham Palace. It was the oh God, the other one. That's I'll remember it in a minute, but. I don't remember the location as much as it was Princess Anne that gave it to me. You know,
I love her. I really love Princess Anne. And also, I actually had a letter back from Camilla, the Queen, because she's very into and she's very supportive of anyone. Have you met her?
I have, yeah.
Oh,
but only because I was invited to. She put on garden party, and I was lucky enough to be one of the people that was invited, and it was all for people working in domestic abuse.
Wow.
We're not mates or anything like that.
You don't get to wear the diamonds, I want to say. But she is very compassionate, though, because she wrote a letter back to me, because I heard her do a speech on it, and I thought, oh my word. And I began to think, have you actually been a sufferer? Because it was so spot on. And I wrote to her and said how brilliant it was. And as a survivor of it, you know, I really applaud you, blah, 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 all that creepy stuff, you know, that sort of just sucking up. But I got a lovely letter back from her, which she personally signed. And I really thought she comes across as a very ordinary person. She's not highfalutin, is she?
Well, you know, I'm just ever grateful for any woman with a voice, with power, who is actually going to put their weight behind this. So
yes,
incredibly grateful that somebody, you know, with her kind of status.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
It lacks status.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes, that's right. And I think and then also for Princess Anne, I just think she's a remarkable. I just think she's so down to earth. She's got such a cracking good sense of humour. You're very lucky.
Windsor Castle, was that one?
Yes, that would be right. Yes, that would be right. Yeah, that would be right. Yeah, that would be right. Something else I wanted to ask you. Now, we've recently had the government going on about, if you're a naughty boy, you're going on a misogyny course.
Okay.
Right. Is that really going to help? And why aren't girls going on a course? It shouldn't be like, if you're, I mean, I believe it starts in the very early years where there's trauma and it distorts. And because you're not born to be an abuser, are you?
Well, you might say that at an extreme end of the scale, some personality traits will be genetic. It's always a mixture of, yes, of course it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And yes, yeah. No, I suppose, yes.
Well, we learn it. Yeah. Yeah,
because the worrying thing is, I was looking at some stuff about early years, and a child has formed empathy by the age of 1.
Yeah.
According to its, you know, obviously the parenting and how loving the parents have been. So children that have been born into a domestic abuse situation where their trauma, and I mean, I was quite, it was something to do with the subconscious mind of a child. I was reading by some professor over in America, and it leapt off the page at me that empathy is formed by 1.
Well, I have a very particular view about where coercive control comes from.
Right.
So I think there are, from the research that I've looked at, there are 2 key groups who are likely to be coercively controlling. The first group are those people who are socialized, shall we say, or learn through their culture, through their religion, society, whatever, what the rules are regarding relationships. Okay, so that's your big group. The second group will be probably those people who have personality traits where, as you're just saying, they lack empathy, they lack sympathy, what we might call personality disorder traits.
Yes.
Those kinds of things. So they fall into those 2 groups. But both of those 2 groups, it's about entitlement. It's about, I am entitled to dominate you or to control you. Now, they might think that because that's what society or culture has told them. And that is our bigger problem. So when you talk about misogyny, it is a huge part of domestic abuse. So, but it's not necessarily, some people don't even recognize how misogynistic they might be. But if you adhere to what we might call a traditional view of marriage. Let's keep it simple. Now, that traditional view of marriage across the world is that the man is mainly in charge and the woman takes a more submissive role. I'm being very broad here, obviously. Now, you would think, and I've heard a lot of people say that that's a really nice traditional approach to relationships. It's the most dangerous approach that there is, because that approach tells that person, I am entitled to dominate this other person. And then if they don't follow my rules, I'm not getting what I'm entitled to. Yeah. And that is where the root of many of our problems are with coercive control, I'm afraid. So when you mention misogyny, and it's not a popular word to throw around, is it? A lot of people will come back at you and they will say misogyny is not a problem, or misogyny and misandry are equal problems. You'll get all sorts of pushback. So it's a fact, I'm afraid. Misogyny is a big problem when we are talking about high risk abuse and homicide. Do you
think, though, do you think, because I do think sometimes with these, I do a course on with the youngsters and teenagers on toxic relationships. So boy meets girl, they got that problem, blah, blah, blah. I see at the end of that course, it's more boys that come forward that have got trouble with girlfriends that they didn't realize were controlling. And do you think it starts then, and that person that is a control freak, even when they're 14, 16, 17, that goes on a natural continuum?
Right, I'm going to take you back to the beginning of our conversation. We have a problem with men killing women. Right. Okay. All right. Yeah. I think I made that
absolutely clear. Yes. Yeah.
So men who are controlling may feel more entitled to control. So if you're getting lots and lots of boys coming forward and saying their girlfriends are controlling, they may well be. I'm not saying that those boys are imagining that. But what I will remind you is that controlling girls probably won't kill you.
Yeah, that's they might hit and they might it's that. Do you find
they won't stalk you and they won't become a danger to you in your
No, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I get what you're saying, because they can be vile, can't they? But yes, I see what you mean. Yeah, I do. I mean, excuse me, I had a barrister that I was talking to about a couple of years ago, and the person who was going to be sued and prosecuted was a really attractive little girl, a little short, tiny thing with blonde hair like you, looked absolutely stunning. And what's she done? And she had pushed her partner through a plate glass window, and he was put in intensive care for about 3 weeks. But no, it wasn't. The desire wasn't to kill; it was to harm and maim. Not.
Was it?
Well, I don't know.
No, you don't know, do you? You
don't know, do you? I mean, maybe
you really don't know. And until you know all of the circumstances, I mean, that situation could have played out in any number of ways, as with a boy on a girl. We have to be very clear what abuse is, what coercive control is, and it's in my training, for example, we talk about motivation being really, really important. So if you do hurt somebody or smash up their car or whatever it is you've done, what is the motivation? Yes. Now, if the motivation is to defend yourself, for example, or it is just youth's antisocial behavior, or all sorts of things, that is not the same as your stalker doing it to you or your user doing it to you. So motivation is really important when we're trying to think about how dangerous somebody might be. So that's why you've got to know. You can't just say, oh, well, there was this lovely little Barbie doll, and look what she tried to not kill him, but she wanted him in intensive care. Is that true? And if it was, then she's probably got bigger problems than just being a bit controlling with her boyfriend, because she's probably got some of these personality traits that are going to be a problem for her and any relationship she has throughout her life.
Yeah, I was talking to, I don't know if you're aware of Mark Brooks from Mankind the other day, and And it was true. He said he went into a room full of women, and they were talking about bullies and this, that, and the other, and abuse, domestic abuse, and all that. And they were saying, you know, the girl who's the bully in school, I was bullied at school, will grow up to be that same foul bully. You don't stop being a bully. You're probably a bully in the office or whatever. And I've often thought, I wonder if Hilary Webster is still out there bullying people. I mean, I can't believe she ever became a nice person. That's, you know, so do you...
I'm a bit confused about why we are talking so much about females when I've just said bigger problem.
Yeah.
I have dealt with homicides that have been by women towards their male partners. I know they exist out there. I know those women, controlling women, exist, and they are dangerous, but they are much, much, much smaller.
Much smaller. Yeah, much smaller than. Do you find, being the control freak, the controller, the coercive controller, are they capable of making a homicide look like a suicide?
Absolutely, for sure. It's a very big problem.
Yeah.
It's one I've been looking at. We call them like hidden homicides. So or staged scenes. So what that would be is maybe you've got something that looks like a suicide, but actually it's a homicide. So the scene has been staged to hide the fact that it's a homicide. So I started looking at some of the international research in this area, and the staged scene researchers are saying that by far and away, the most common category of homicide to have a staged scene is a domestic abuse homicide.
Gosh.
And that's international. So this is a huge problem for us. Now, counting how many hidden homicides there are is an impossible task, because they're all being recorded as something else.
Yeah.
You know, do you remember the lady who was pushed from or thrown from Arthur's Seat recently?
Yes.
You know, if she hadn't survived long enough to say to a member of the public, I didn't jump, I didn't fall, that would have been a hidden homicide, wouldn't it? Yeah. But it would have been recorded as a fall. So we can't count them.
It's a massive job, isn't it? So we're coming to, honestly, I could sit and talk to you all day. I just find it fascinating, but we are coming to the end of the interview. What next for Professor Jane Monckton-Smith? You're going to take on the whole world. You really should do. I mean, how is it going with all these gaps and trying to climb Everest?
It is, yeah. It's not a hill, is it? It is definitely a mountain that we're trying to climb. I've just done, or I'm still doing work on tracking the victim's escalation. So, which might help us, one, track from victim behaviours how dangerous the relationship is getting in the background, and how they might be moving towards hurting themselves. So we've done a piece of work on that, and putting the two timelines together then gives you this much bigger picture. Yeah. We've got our homicide timeline app coming out very, very soon, which tells everybody anything that they would need to know about risk.
Truly, you're doing. I mean, my last question to you is, I mean, I am going to say to people, buy that book. Everybody needs to read Control, because it's such a good read. And you can see for yourself. I was shocked at some of the things, because they're very good at sniffing out a very nice person, aren't they? That's not going to give them.
Yes, they are.
You know, they're very, very sharp at finding their victim before they've become a victim. It's chilling. And your book sets it out brilliantly. Control. How on earth do you stay sane? What do you do?
I'm sane. I don't know. I don't know that I am.
Relax.
But I do know that since I started this work, I have changed fundamentally as a person.
Sure.
I've seen too many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of murders and suicides and grief. And I've also become incredibly frustrated with our responses, the same as everybody else, but it changes you fundamentally. And I'm not the happy-go-lucky, if I ever was really, but it makes you less trusting of the world.
Oh, it does. Yeah. I find the same with my own work, and yet what do? I walk the dog, and but I'm passionate to anybody. If you can help one person, your oxygen's been worth it.
Yeah.
Honestly, Jane, I cannot thank you enough. I always want to end with hope, and what you are doing is so hopeful for people in this situation. And I'm absolutely delighted you came on today, and carry on with the great work, because you are saving lives. You are, but you haven't got a benchmark to how many that you have saved, but they will be out there. They will be out there. And I think I've learned a lot. I really thank you. And so, what can I say? What can I say?
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Queen of homicide.
We need to end it. We need to stop the homicides. And
absolutely. Well, look, you. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you, and bye for now. And we will catch up, because we are still going to be in touch with stuff. We've known each other a long time. So bye-bye, and thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye, Marilyn. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, that was Professor Jane Monckton-Smith, and what some wonderful advice, and certainly a no-nonsense lady, was she? She certainly knows her, I am confused that we're still talking about women. I mean, got my hand smacked there. Anyway, I can't thank her enough. I'm absolutely honoured that she came on, and I hope you've learned for it to watch out and help the people around you. Buy that book, please, Control. And so this is Marilyn Hawes signing off with Unprecedented TV with her programme Heart and Soul. The next one is going to be with 3 Dads Walking, number 3, Dads Walking, the gentleman whose daughter sadly took their own life. I know I do have some dark subjects, but that's the way to change people's minds and their thinking. So bye for now, and see you again soon.